Just go there. Just go. Vai. Vai.
It was a chaotic and emotionally charged afternoon at the Makindye Chief Magistrates Court, a day that was expected to mark the official reading of charges against socialite Bryan Chirumira, popularly known as Bryan White, but instead, it turned into a scene of confusion, shock, and legal uncertainty. Police had arrived at court with their prime suspect in one of the country's most disturbing cases in recent years, the alleged ritual killing of 22-year-old Carol Nalubwama. But the figure brought before court bore little resemblance to the flamboyant public personality Ugandans have come to know. Witnesses watched in disbelief as the police pickup carrying a makeshift cell pulled into the courtyard. Inside it lay Bryan White on a thin green hospital mattress, weak and bandaged and barely able to move. Officers, both men and women, gently helped him up off the pickup. They had picked him up from an unnamed medical facility believed to be Mild May Hospital in Lueza just hours before. As he was being carried towards the courtroom, he screamed out for help, yelling for his mother, begging to be taken back to hospital. Inside the courtroom, the scene worsened. Still lying on the floor, unable to sit or stand, Bryan White thrashed out, swinging his arms in panic and crying out in pain. His legs were wrapped in thick bandages. He wore a military-style t-shirt, but his voice trembled, echoing throughout the corridors of the court. Magistrate Lona Patience Mukundane attempted to read the charges, but she could not. The suspect's uncontrollable shouting drowned her out. His condition, she said, made it impossible for court to proceed. After several attempts, Magistrate Mukundane made a decisive ruling. Police must immediately return Bryan White to the hospital where they had found him. And so, without a plea entered, the man at the center of a national controversy was taken back into an ambulance-like police vehicle and driven away under heavy guard. Even before his dramatic arrival, the case had already grown in scale. Just a day earlier, 4 other suspects, all connected to Bryan White, had been remanded on related charges. Among them was his wife, Daisy Nalunga, alongside her, Daphne Baho, and an advocacy officer, Nakato Nava, a self-employed woman from Chamula Zone, Joyce Irene Nambalirwa, an administrator at M. Mabirizi Nursing Home. Prosecutors believe the 4 played various roles in the events that led to the death of Carol Nalubwama. According to the prosecution, the events unfolded on October 22, 2025 at Bryan White's residence in Chamula Zone. Carol Nalubwama, who recently returned from Dubai, was allegedly killed for the purpose of ritual sacrifice. Charges cite Section 2 and 3 of the Prevention and Prohibition of Human Sacrifice Act. But the allegations do not end there. Prosecutors say that the incident happened between October 22nd and 27th. The victim was taken to Chirudu Hospital, already severely burnt. The burns they allege were not accidental. One of the charges also accuses Bryan White of handling combustible materials recklessly, leading to a fire that caused the fatal injuries. Another accuses him of possessing marijuana after police reportedly found bottles containing cannabis seeds and leaves inside his residence. Perhaps the most chilling allegation is the charge of conspiracy to commit a felony. Prosecutors say Bryan White, his wife Daisy Nalunga, Daphne Baho, and Nakato Nava conspired to perform a ritual involving candle wax, petrol, ghee, and honey. They allegedly massaged the victim's body during the ritual before the fire that eventually led to her injuries. Police records also suggest the group attempted to mislead investigators. Between October 28th and 31st, they allegedly told officers that the victim had been burnt on October 27th, only later to be taken to Chirudu Hospital. Detectives later discovered that the incident happened earlier and that the victim was not the first to be taken to Mabirizi Nursing Home. Amidst the worsening case, 41-year-old Joyce Irene Nambalirwa, the administrator at Mabirizi Nursing Home, faces her own serious charges. She is accused of manslaughter and negligence, failing to refer the clinically injured victim to a main hospital. Prosecutors argue that her failure directly contributed to Carol Nalubwama's death. So, what truly happened inside Bryan White's home? Police say Bryan White himself claimed the burns resulted from a gas cylinder explosion while Carol was cooking. He said he too sustained the injuries trying to save her. However, detectives found several inconsistencies in this allegation. At the scene, police reportedly discovered grass-thatched structures suspected to be shrines. And as investigators dug deeper, the victim's grieving parents raised their own suspicions. Her father, Salongo Tom Mutiaba, told police that Bryan White personally called him saying his daughter had died while receiving treatment at the shrine. That statement alone triggered heightened suspicion and intensified investigations. Police are now reviewing CCTV footage, analyzing forensic evidence, and piecing together timelines to determine whether this was a tragic accident or a horrific ritual killing. For a number of Ugandans, this is not the first time Bryan White has appeared in the headlines. In 2017, he and his bodyguard were charged with attempted murder after the shooting of a neighbor, Victor Bitwire. He spent time in prison before the charges were dropped. In 2020, he was arrested again, this time for fraud and unpaid debts, including allegedly obtaining a luxurious vehicle under false pretenses. That same year, during the COVID-19 lockdown, the issue of police presenting suspects in poor health resurfaced when MPs Francis Zake were taken to court in a similar condition. The case sparked national outrage and later contributed to the dismissal of the then Chief Magistrate, who handled part of the matter improperly. And now, once again, the spotlight is on the justice system and how cases involving high-profile suspects are being managed. As the case develops, key questions remain. Was Carol Nalubwama's death an accident or a deliberate ritual killing? Why was Bryan White brought to court in such a frail condition? And was he genuinely ill or attempting to avoid arraignment? For now, the court has made one thing clear. He must be treated first, then brought back to answer the charges. Meanwhile, his co-accused remain in remand as the investigations continue. This is a case that has captured national attention, mixing tragedy, mystery, fear, and deep cultural questions about ritual practices. A young woman's life was cut short, a high-profile figure stands out at the center of the storm, and a family waits for justice. The truth of what happened on that October day will soon unfold in court. Until then, the story of Bryan White and the death of Carol Nalubwama remain one of the most gripping and unsettling cases Uganda has witnessed in years. Story compiled by Judith Kukunda for Uganda Radio Network in Kampala.